if you want a reliable tenant, you need to learn to read between the lines of the rental application. Okay, here is a copy of the residential application form that I provide in my screening kit. I've gone ahead and filled it out with a bunch of random information to create a mock application. We're going to go through it line by line and just discuss the information provided, so you can see exactly what I look at when I'm reviewing an application. With that said, let's dive in. Okay, starting right at the beginning, we are going to go through the applicant's basic details. The first thing I check is literally their name. I cross-reference it to their ID and other documents like pay stubs and their employment letter. If it doesn't match, we obviously have a problem. And yes, if I haven't already, now I'm Googling them, I'm checking LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the socials. Maybe it's invasive, but I don't care. You'd be surprised what you can find out from a simple Google or social media check. Not only from how they live to if they're lying about having pets or what kind of person they are, but also if they've been in the news or they have a criminal record. I once found out someone had been arrested from a simple Google search. As a side note, I purposefully left sin blank. Sometimes landlords like to read a bit too much into this, but it's not mandatory for people to fill out, so you shouldn't overthink this. Don't worry about it, move on. Most people are going to leave this blank. Moving on, their current address. There is a lot to check here, okay? First of all, our mock applicant, as you can see, he's only been at his current address for 6 months. That is not a long period of time. Most leases are for at least a year. So now I'm certainly questioning why they are looking to move already. If I hear something like the landlord is selling and we don't want to live through that process, fine. Something like my roommate threw all of my stuff out for no reason, yeah, no. There usually is a reason. They are usually the reason and the problem. The second issue here is, as you can see, they've also left the landlord's phone number blank. This is very rarely a mistake, okay? Best case scenario is they didn't want you calling their current landlord until they've secured a place. This isn't ideal, but if they're good applicants, I'd make my approval conditional on me speaking to that landlord. In over a decade of doing this, I've maybe seen that a handful of times. What's far more common is it's left blank on purpose because they don't want you speaking to their current landlord. They'll often start telling you how terrible their landlord is and make up some kind of excuse. This usually means they are the problemo, okay? And they don't want me finding out. Now, I'm not saying all landlords are perfect, obviously not. But usually there's more to the story. There's a difference between someone not liking their landlord because he hasn't fixed the AC in 2 summers, but still giving me his phone number, which is what I expect on the application, because as soon as I don't see the phone number there, my spidey senses go up and I'm thinking, there's something that you don't want me to find out. If your relationship with your landlord is so contentious that I can't even call them to get a reference, oof, it is a red flag for me. And I'll tell you this, I have never approved someone without speaking to their landlord. And I've never had someone skip rent, so just saying. One final point on this section. I know this has kind of dragged on for such a small section, but it's very important that you look at all the details. Now, this is something a lot of people just skim right over, and that is the current amount they're paying in rent. This applicant is paying $2,600. That's fine, and honestly, pretty in line with today's market, at least in my area. But let's say someone was paying $1,200 living in an apartment, and now they're applying for your house that's, say, listed at $2,800. That's a bit of a jump, right? Even if they technically qualify on paper, we need to dig deeper, because suddenly forking on an extra $1,600 a month is a lot. So let's assume they do qualify on income. What does their debt look like? Is it a couple moving in together and now they've got a combined household income? You may just have to ask as well, like, hey, this is a big jump in rent. Are you sure you're going to be comfortable with this? Was that 1600 being used for vacations or towards a high-end car payment? Will this jump put a strain on them financially based on their current lifestyle, is what I'm saying. Technically qualifying and actually paying every month without stress, those are two very different things. Now, I'm not going to decline someone just because there's a big jump in rent, but it does become part of the whole picture and something I take note of. Okay, next. This is where the glasses need to go on seriously. In a perfect world, I'd have their last 5 addresses. Realistically, not happening. But what I do want is their previous landlord's contact information. The previous landlord is going to be your most unbiased reference. The current landlord could give you a glowing reference just to get them out of the house. Now, our mock applicant owned his previous home, so there's no previous landlord, right? But not a problem. Now, the reason I did this as an example is because a lot of landlords see this and then they just move on. But we need to verify, okay? Now, when I was an agent, this was very easy for me. I could pull title records, sale history, all of it. If you're not an agent, you could check Zillow listings. I think you won't be able to see ownership, but at least you can see if it did sell in the time when he said he left the house. Or if you have a good relationship with an agent, it doesn't hurt to ask if they can check for you. The ease of them checking is going to depend on province, because some provinces, like Ontario, you can just go on Geo Warehouse and easily pull the title records. But in areas like Alberta, you have to pay. And so it's not as easy. But another thing you could use to your benefit is a credit report. Now, I don't know if all credit reports do this, but I know the rent check credit report does, and they list previous addresses. And this is where I have caught people lying before. I'm just going to pull this mock credit report up for you here. And you can see that, yes, Slough Avenue is noted and dated for 2023. And up here, you can see that 2 Willow Lane is also listed as their current address. Great, that lines up with our application, right? But this is where things get interesting, okay? You can see a previous address here, one that was not mentioned on the application, River Avenue. And now I have questions. The red flags are raised. Why wasn't this address mentioned? Does he not want me contacting the owner of River Avenue? Is there a different explanation? Why is this person moving so frequently? Is it a sign of instability? What's going on here? And at this stage, if it is an applicant who is a gold star in every other respect, then I will approach them with questions and say, hey, I saw this address on your credit report. What's the situation here? You didn't put it on your application as a previous address. Now, when I've had this in the past, an explanation that I've accepted is, oh, that was my parents' house. We just moved in there temporarily between when I sold my house and when I found another rental. Great, that makes sense, right? And of course, even if this is their story, we would want to try to verify that the parents did, in fact, own the home. But if they start to hum and haw about things, then I guess that's your answer, right? They're not being truthful to you. And that's really all you need to know. So this is what I mean when I say you have to read between the lines, right? Because the application will tell you a story, but you have to look for it. And this is such a small part of it, right? Because you have the application, but then you have to dig through the pay stubs and check the employment letter and go through the credit report line by line. And I'm going to do a shameless plug here, but my screening kit is literally going to tell you exactly what you need to look for, and goes through everything. Really, guys, it gives you such a detailed overview of how to screen tenants like an absolute pro. Yeah. All right, up next is employment. Obviously, very important. You'll need to cross-reference these details to the employment letter, make sure it's the same job, same income, same details, right? Okay, now you'll notice our applicant has only been at his job for 2 months. Again, very short period of time. And is he on a probationary period? What's the situation here? Now, short employment isn't automatically a problem, obviously. I mean, damn, we can't just deny every applicant who got a new job. But for someone his age and someone who previously owned a home, I'd want to see job history. And as you can see, they've put not applicable here. Now I've had people put not applicable. I've had people just straight up leave it blank. But if it's missing, it's immediately going to make me wonder why they're not telling me something. Okay, do they not want me speaking to their previous employer? What's the situation? Those details need to be filled out. This part is obviously very important, and that's income, okay? Because they cannot pay rent with good intentions. The first thing I'm confirming is if what they've written on the application not only matches the pay stubs, but it matches what they told me during pre-screening. Because if they didn't qualify then, why do I even have this application? Now, my personal threshold for this is 3 times the rent in income. And that is for household income, and that is gross income, income before taxes. Okay, so if rent is $2,800, I want to see at least $8,400 in gross income, and that can be from both applicants combined. This is a very standard threshold. Some have higher ones, some lower. It really depends on what your comfort level is and even what type of rental you have. I've seen some people be a bit more lenient when it comes to apartment buildings and others more strict when it comes to a nice single family home. They may want to see even 4 times the rental amount in income. Now, as you can see, alone, our applicant Michael wouldn't be able to qualify, but we're just going to go ahead and assume that his wife does make up the balance. Moving on. All right, who is actually living in the property? This matters more than people think, okay? It's such an important part of a residential application form. Obviously, most applicants are going to just list their family members. But here, and something I've seen, which is why I put it here, is we've got a friend, right? Ryan. So again, questions. Was this friend mentioned during pre-screening? Or is this a surprise addition to the application? Have you met them in person? Do the main applicants need this friend in order to qualify for the rent? Is the house even suitable for this arrangement? How long has he known the friend? Look, personally, for single-family homes, I do not like this friend moving in dynamic, okay? The only time I've made an exception, although I rarely have, is when there's a separate in-law suite and it was disclosed to me up front, and the main applicants do not need the friend in order to qualify for the income threshold. But if they do need this additional person in order to qualify, we have a problem, okay? Now your rent depends on a third party. And when that friend leaves, because they usually do, what happens? Then the couple wants to bring in a different friend to help pay the rent, someone you likely won't meet or get a chance to vet beforehand, okay? And there's not a single thing you can do about this. I could be wrong, but in most provinces, I think all of them, they don't even need to tell you as a landlord who they're bringing into the house. So now you've potentially got a revolving door of people you've never approved, and it just gets messy. And I can hear the chirpers saying, well, families break up too. Yeah, they do. But a family dynamic is just a little bit more stable than a we're just splitting rent situation. It's a no from me on friendship dynamics. I know this is not RTA compliant, okay? I know for anyone complaining, well, you do it then, okay? You go buy a house and you rent it out to a bunch of roommates and couples with roommates, and let me know how that goes. See how far you get when shit goes sideways for you. But I will warn you against denying someone solely because of this. Don't do that. Be careful. Be smart. Assess the situation and find another reason that you can use. Whoa, okay, let's move on to pets. You can see on our application, they have indicated they do have pets, but they have left the details blank. And it's not usually because they forgot, it's usually because they don't want you to know something. It's usually one of these two things. They either have too many pets or they have a protective, considered dangerous breed. This is why you have to ask for details. I know it seems so stupid, but you'd be fucking surprised. I once had a lady leave this blank, and when I asked her the details, she told me she had a dog breeding business and didn't know what to say on the application. She was applying for a townhome with a small backyard. Hell no, that wasn't going to work. Okay, card details. This is usually used for parking assignment in condo buildings. But I mean, you can use it for your own monitoring purposes. You know, when they come to the showing, but they show up in that same car listed here. But look, you're likely not going to even remember the number plates, and even if they leave it blank, it's not been a deal breaker for me. A lot of times it's a bit of a privacy reason. If you do require it for like parking enforcement at a condo, then you're going to have to say, hey, I require this before approval. There's nothing wrong with that. And here you just check that their driver's license number does match what's on their ID. All right, guys, we're almost at the end. This is just the rental details so I can keep things organized if I have multiple rentals listed at the same time. But here, this is important to take note of. If you've read my screening kit, you will know that a quick move-in date is often a red flag unless there is a solid, verifiable reason. Like, for example, their landlord just sold the property, and although they have 2 months to move, they'd rather start the move sooner, which is fine. That makes sense. But even if the story is verifiable, a move-in date of tomorrow or even in a couple of days is too fast. Because you need time. You need time to review the application, collect documents, verify them, pull credit, call references, basic due diligence. And they need time too, okay? Utilities don't just magically transfer to them. They need to organize tenants' insurance. You need to collect certified deposits. You need time to confirm that the utilities were switched into their name. Some landlords, Tim, see the immediate move-in and think, perfect, no vacancy and no mortgage payment. But you need to slow down, okay? The checks still need to be done. Keys need to be cut. The house probably still needs to be cleaned. And utilities need to be confirmed. Urgent move-ins are very rarely about convenience. Credit. You guys, there is a lot to cover when it comes to credit. What they've disclosed beforehand, obviously what the report looks like. There's so much. Just to cover the basics here, this applicant has indicated fair. I see fair a lot on applications, and it does mean different things to different people. I have seen fair mean 400 to some people, and I've seen it mean 700 to others. Personally, I don't shy away when I see an application with fair ticked. If it's an application I want to work with, then I will pull credit and decide for myself. Look, I've actually had some people say they've got great credit, and then I've pulled credit and it's been a score with bankruptcies and hard money loans. I think they just didn't think I was actually going to pull credit on them, but I always do if I'm interested in working with them. And, I've had others say they've had bad credit when it's been a 650 score. But they've had perfect payment history and low credit utilization, but maybe a bankruptcy from a divorce, like 3 years ago or something like that. Ultimately, your only option, if it's an applicant you want to work with, is to read the credit report, okay? Because it's always going to be case by case. And this is exactly why you don't just look at score alone. You need to look at the whole picture for the whole story. First and last, they should ideally have both first and last, especially if they have a quick move-in. Otherwise, I'm fine to accept last upon lease signing and first on the day of move-in. No matter what, all deposits have to be in certified funds. Last, but very importantly, the lease has to be signed. I know that seems redundant, but I have definitely received leases that are not signed. I don't know why you would send an unsigned lease other than you're trying to be a little weasel and not consent to certain things, but no signature, no review. That's my rule. I need the signature because I need consent to pull credit, and I also need them to sign off on the accuracy of the information they've given me, which is basically what this little blurred out paragraph is about. And there you have it. So yeah, I know it's a lot, but it's very important that you break down the application line by line and really understand the story. There's a lot an application can tell you. Of course, in conjunction with this, you're going to go through pay stubs, you're going to go through the employment letter, you are certainly going to go through a credit report when you pull credit on them. And I do provide a breakdown of a rent check credit report, literally line by line, everything you need to know in the screening kit. Video disclaimer. This is a mock rental application. Real life probably won't look this cut and dry. And both your experience and applications received will most certainly vary. This is not legal or financial advice. And yeah, some of this can and may conflict with tenant laws, depending on where you are in the country. Now, let me know in the comments if there is something else you want me to break down or if you think there's something I've missed.